So, generative AI, it's everywhere, right? Companies are throwing billions and billions of dollars at it, all hoping for some kind of massive revolution. But for most of them, that revolution just hasn't shown up. There's this huge disconnect between the hype and the reality, and it's created a giant puzzle for business leaders. So let's get into it. Let's try and solve the mystery of what we're calling the GenAI Divide.
Okay, first up, let's just talk about the sheer scale here. Enterprises have recently sunk around $40 billion into generative AI. That is a staggering amount of money chasing transformation. But the real question is, what is it actually buying?
Well, here's the kicker. For the vast majority of companies, it's not buying much. Recent research shows that a shocking 95% of organizations are getting zero return on that investment. That's right, zero. All that cash, all those pilot programs, and for most, it's a dead end. This, right here, is the heart of the mystery.
And that right there is what we're calling the GenAI Divide. It's this massive, massive gap between the tiny slice of companies, the 5%, that are playing millions in real value out of AI, and everybody else, the other 95%, who are just stuck spinning their wheels in pilot projects with nothing to show for it. So what on earth separates these two groups?
To figure this out, we've got to start by looking at the wrong side of that divide. This is where most companies are living right now. I mean, it's a world of high adoption, everyone's trying AI, but incredibly low transformation. Almost nothing is actually changing.
You know, when you look at the data, the impact here is all over the place. Despite all the noise you hear, it turns out only two sectors, tech and media, are seeing any real structural change. For the other 7 major sectors, financial services, healthcare, you name it, it's mostly just playing around in the sandbox.
And listen, this quote from a manufacturing COO just nails it. The hype you're seeing on LinkedIn, all the talk about everything changing overnight, it just doesn't match the day-to-day reality inside most companies. Yeah, maybe they're doing a few things a little faster, but the fundamental way they work, it's completely untouched.
Okay, and this is a huge piece of the puzzle, what we call the pilot to production chasm. So general tools, yeah, they get used a decent amount. But the custom, task-specific tools, the ones that are supposed to deliver the real enterprise value, they have a 95% failure rate. They almost never see the light of day.
And if you want to know why, just listen to the CIO. They're seeing dozens of demos, and most of the AI tools being sold are either just flimsy wrappers around a generic model, or they feel more like science experiments than actual business solutions. They're just not ready for prime time.
Okay, so if the tools themselves aren't quite working, what's the real problem? Is it the tech, the data, regulations? Well, it turns out it's something simpler and way more fundamental. It's this one missing piece: learning.
And to really get this, just look at what people are actually doing. Even when their company shells out for an expensive custom tool, employees secretly just go back to their personal ChatGPT account. And why? They say the answers are just plain better, and they already know the interface. Think about that. A $20 a month consumer app is running circles around a $50,000 enterprise system. How does that happen?
So that leads to this big paradox, right? If these consumer tools are so good and so popular, why can't companies just use them for the really important stuff? Why do they keep failing when the stakes are high and the work is actually critical?
And the answer? It all comes down to one critical flaw. These tools, they have no memory. They don't learn from your feedback, which means you have to feed them the exact same context over and over and over again. You can't really customize them to your specific workflow, and they totally fall apart the second they hit an edge case. In a word, they're static.
And check this out. For quick, simple stuff, yeah, 70% of us would rather just use AI. But the second a project gets complex, 90% of people still want a human. So the dividing line here isn't about raw intelligence. It's about the ability to learn, to adapt, and to remember context. And that is the learning gap.
All right, we've laid out the problem. We've diagnosed the issue. Now for the important part, how do you actually fix it? Let's get into the playbook for crossing the divide and joining that successful 5%.
When you ask the people holding the purse strings what they really want from an AI vendor, it's not what you might think. It's not about the flashiest new model. Their top priorities are a vendor they can trust, who actually understands how they work, and, this is the big one, a tool that gets smarter over time. They want a partner, not just a product.
And the companies that are winning, the 5%, this is their playbook, right here. They demand tools that are deeply customized to their business. They measure success based on real outcomes, on the bottom line, not on some tech spec.
They see their vendors as partners to get through the early bumps, and they get their best ideas from the people on the front lines who are actually doing the work.
But this is exactly where most companies take a wrong turn. They're pouring about 70% of their AI money into really visible areas, like sales and marketing. And look, it makes sense, I guess, because the metrics look good on a dashboard. But the biggest wins? They're somewhere else entirely.
Yeah, the real gold is hidden away in the back office. The companies on the right side of the divide, they're reporting annual savings anywhere from $2 to $10 million by automating processes and getting rid of those super expensive BPO contracts.
And it doesn't stop there. Another huge win from the back office is a 30% reduction in what they're spending on external agencies for stuff like content and creative work. So while the front office is getting all the flashy headlines, the back office is quietly delivering the actual cash.
So, what's on the other side? What happens when you finally cross that divide? Well, this isn't just about getting a better tool. It's about a completely new way of working, and it's paving the way for something called the Agentic Web.
The Agentic Web? This is really the next big step. Think of it less like a tool you use and more like a network of smart, autonomous AI agents, almost like digital employees, that can learn, work together, and manage really complex workflows all on their own. We're moving from people prompting tools to intelligent agents coordinating with each other.
Okay, and this is really important because there's a ticking clock here. The window to make the right choice is closing, and it's closing fast. In the next 18 months or so, big companies are going to lock in with the vendors who can provide these learning systems. And once a company has spent months training in AI on its data and its workflows, the cost and the pain of switching to a competitor, it's going to be massive.
Which all brings us to one final really critical question you need to ask. Your company? It's definitely investing in AI. But what kind of AI is it? Take a hard look. Are you buying tools that actually learn and adapt and get better on their own? Or are you just buying fancier tools that still need a person to hold their hand every single step of the way? Because the answer to that question, well, that's going to decide which side of the GenAI divide you end up on.